All right. Hello. 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 I am recording. Welcome to Thought Frenzy. Welcome back. I'm joined here today with Emma. Why don't you give a nice warm welcome hello?
Hello, I am Emma. Happy to be here today on this fine podcast.
Thank you. Hey, I'm glad to have you here. So I've understand. Tell them about your understanding of culture with your education. You got a bachelor's degree, and what's the term again?
I have a bachelor's degree in anthropology, which encompasses both cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, archaeology, and then biological anthropology, which is a subset of paleontology.
It's a lot of ologies.
It's a lot of ologies.
So
yeah.
we got a lot to talk about here. But before we get into that, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
That's cool.
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm about 2.5 drinks in.
Nice.
Feeling loosey goosey, ready to chat.
Hell yeah. I got a drink in myself. We're good to go. All right. Well, first of all, in your own words, how would you, what is your perception of culture? Like, what is it to you fundamentally?
So, culture to me, outside of the definition that has been taught to me in anthropology classes, is just any kind of tradition or just ways that people are that are passed down throughout generations and come to kind of encompass a certain group of people.
I feel that. That is spot on. Definitely spot on. Now, how would you, what's your idea of today's modern culture, specifically in America?
Modern American culture, I would say, comes a lot from our economic ideals as well as the two-party system that exists in this country now. It also is very varied because this country is so large, so it really depends a lot about where you're living in the country specifically, which makes it difficult to kind of encompass an American culture in a more nuanced way. Because to most people, American culture is kind of this like apple pie and baseball. But when you talk to most average Americans, this is not their personal perception of the American culture.
Right. I feel like, would you agree that it feels like our culture lacks culture?
I would agree with that, but I also disagree with that in the sense that America is known as a melting pot of different cultures. Which in a sense I think becomes American culture is just made up of multiple other cultures.
I agree with that. I guess my idea of modern American culture is just kind of what's constantly fed to us through entertainment, which overall summed up in terms of like what we see the most in America, at least in my perception, it feels like American culture can be summed up as like sports and cheeseburgers and twerking asses and it.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it too comes from like old Americana and American folklore, which is another subset of anthropology as well. Like a lot of American ideals can be seen in early American folklore, like for example Paul Bunyan, and which Paul Bunyan especially encompasses kind of the early American cultural idea of manifest destiny, which in turn also brings in, not to be political, but like taking over Native American lands for the betterment of more white American culture.
Right.
And so I think when you kind of piece it up in that sort of sense, American culture is sort of the overculture of America, which is still seen today as what is considered white American middle class culture.
Okay. Yeah, that hey, lots of facts there for sure. Now, do you feel like there's an aspect of our culture though, like that feels very divided? Like it's almost like, especially with a two-party system, as you were saying, it feels like there's these two masses within this mixing pot of different cultures, these two masses that feel like they're on completely different frequencies, that they themselves are different cultures. And it feels like they're both trying, like people on the right and left are trying to force the other side into enjoying their culture over the other person's culture.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think that's part of the reason that there are so many issues in America, especially in other countries in the world that are similar to America as far as their cultural makeup, in the sense that it's a melting pot, because most cultures, at least in a pure sense of what a culture is, are made up of like-minded people who share traditions throughout time. And America is a very young country, and so we haven't had a lot of time to share the ideals, and it is also not made up of people who are predominantly one race or one culture or another, which makes it difficult to have a wider American culture.
And I feel like being a part of culture with like-minded people, a sense of community, it feels very healthy for the soul, very just, all around a good thing. And we've kind of evolved through culture. So it kind of feels like through this clashing of cultures, we're kind of getting set back. And what would you say, through your understanding, is, I guess, the best way to approach these modern times? Like, what would you think would be the hurdle that we need to overcome, or how to overcome this hurdle, so to speak?
I feel like that is a very big question that I'm not necessarily qualified to answer, but I will try.
I asked that question knowing neither one of us are qualified enough to answer because, like, none of us are.
Yeah.
But it's like, at least for me, I like to ask these questions to hear different ideas, Yeah. It's
Well, personally, I think that at least outside of America too, the modern world as it is now, with the development of the internet and people being able to talk to other people in other countries that have shared interests, the sort of ethnic standard, so to speak, as far as people basing culture off of specific nationalities, has fallen a little bit more by the wayside and has been taken over more by subcultures that have developed online, whether it be through gaming or shared interest in music, or shared hobbies. And I kind of feel like, in my opinion, that's the way that things are moving. Because when the internet was created, the sort of idea behind it, or one of the many ideas behind it, was to create a global community. And I think it has succeeded in that, in the sense that people are no longer quite as, I guess, stuck with other people within their specific countries, and are able to go based off of individual interests instead of national ones.
I agree with that. And it's good you bring up the internet, because the internet has a lot to do with the way I see things moving in our global society. Because I feel like right now we're still watching the internet grow. And we, in all our thousands of years of documentation of human history, we have never had any sort of moment in our textbooks that describe times like these. We don't know what to do with a whole internet. We don't know where this is leading. But I feel like what we see as the internet right now is just a baby that's still, growing. And when we do have this fully realized internet, I think if we were all in this new internet culture, I think that would be what's the best terminology here? The pie in the sky, so to speak. I feel like that would be the light at the end of the tunnel. It could be, the internet could be leading us to this next phase in human culture as a global species.
Definitely. Well, and I think too, it's kind of tricky with the internet as well, because I remember, just for context, in one of my I think it was an intro to archaeology class, we were talking about the entire span of human history and human evolution, from like the earliest humanoid species that first came out of the trees to now. And I very much remember my professor saying that, if we were to split up this class based off of just timing alone, the last 4 minutes of the final class of the semester would be everything in modern human history, like post-industrial modern human history. And so I feel like in that sense, it's easy to relate the internet almost to the earliest stone tools that humans have used, because for a long time, the earliest stone tools that humanoid species used were the Oldowan tools, and they used these same tools for millions of years before they eventually evolved into a further stone tool, if that makes sense, which was one of the earliest developments of culture, but it takes a long time for the entire species to become accustomed to it and become comfortable with it to the point where it fully spreads across the globe. And so now with the internet, it's obviously much easier to spread the information and spread the knowledge of how to use the internet. But there are still tons and tons of countries that have no access to it, or lots of groups of people in specific countries that don't have access to it. And so although the goal is to create a global community, a lot of the global community that's developing right now is based off of more, first world countries and the things that are popular in first world countries that then become popular on the internet.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more of these more lower class countries starting to rise up to have internet access and be in the same system that we're all in. So I feel like it's still only a matter of time until they do have access to the internet. But this reminds me of a conversation I was having the other day where it's like, how trippy is it that we have an internet when it's like two dudes who were just fucking around decided, oh shit, we can use these sticks to kill things.
Right.
And then one thing led to another from that. Now we have the fucking internet.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's kind of whack. If you were to take someone and just throw them in a forest and say, build the internet, it's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
No. Well, and that's the thing, too. I mean, with a lot of, especially early humans, I mean, way back in the day when they were still using the stone tools and, killing things with sticks and stuff, I mean, the abstract thought that goes into having the internet, wouldn't even have developed enough yet for them to get there. You know? The whole concept of the internet, if you were just thrown into the woods without prior knowledge of the internet, you wouldn't even know how to understand what that is. And I mean, even my parents too. I mean, our parents' generation, they didn't grow up with the internet. And I know even today, they don't fucking know how to use it, you know?
Right.
They are not, you have to grow up with it to get a full understanding of it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, you really do. That's really crazy to think about too. But do you think that we even have the ability to think of things as crazy as the internet without having an understanding of the things that came before it? Is it all just like a tree branching out into these different obscure concepts, and you'd have no concept of the end of this branch unless you knew about the branch that connected that branch, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that's a good way to phrase it. And I mean, in the sense of the tree too, it makes sense where, say, for example, our earliest human species were the trunk of the tree. I mean, they have no way to anticipate the branches that are going to be able to grow off of them because they are only at the trunk of the tree. And so you're able to look back behind you and what you grew from, but you can't look forward because, I mean, going off of the idea of the internet, we have no idea how to conceptualize the things that are going to come next because we have no context for them.
Right.
And so there's no way to think a new thought like that without any kind of context to back it.
Right. Yeah, because if you only see the trunk, you're not, and you don't know that it branches out into anything else.
Yeah.
That's your reality. You're like, oh, it's all about this trunk. And I couldn't comprehend anything that I haven't been exposed to.
Yeah, and I mean, you can certainly look back on the trunk, I guess, in this metaphor. Look back on the trunk and try to find different things within the trunk that could bring you to understand the growing branches.
You can look at the roots, but those roots need to be dug up.
Right.
Exactly. It's not too easy to access.
No, exactly.
No. Yeah, excellent points there. Now, so, I mean, let's see. We went over human culture and the future of culture, essentially, Because, well, do you feel like it's more likely that we're going to have a positive human culture from the internet, or do you think the internet's going to just basically drain our attention spans to the point of a goldfish, and everything just kind of collapses from there?
I mean, it's hard to say. I know with the internet now, it's much easier to develop specific cultures based around obviously your own interests, but because you're developing cultures based around your own interests, you rabbit hole. And so you start looking kind of internally within these specific cultures and end up being sometimes radicalized, sometimes not, but it makes it more difficult to develop kind of a wholesome human culture. It's almost getting more segmented.
Yeah.
The further we delve into the internet.
The internet's so vast,
Yeah.
so we're all getting split into different points of the internet, and everyone's on their own algorithm. So they're being fed on a daily basis this confirmation bias that the way they think that things ought to be is correct.
Yeah.
And we need to start hearing each other out a bit more, I feel. I think people are afraid to disagree. I think people are afraid to talk to people who they know will disagree. I think that only one thing should matter, and I think it should be that we're all pro-human. We should all like good things for ourselves and each other and work together from there, establish that basis, that foundation, and move on from there.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I just feel like it's a little bit idealistic because I don't think that everyone is pro-human. I mean,
Yeah.
I think people are pro
that's true,
themselves
too.
and pro their community, but pro-human as kind of a wider way to phrase it, I don't think is entirely accurate.
Okay. Well, I feel like would it be safe to say that on average, most human beings are pro-human, or at least, like, I don't say pro-human because there's a lot of context of like humans are evil and we're parasites of the earth, and yes, we all know that, but do we all like to be good, or on average a higher percentage?
I would like to think so, but at the same time, I also think that people like being good until the point that it no longer benefits them.
What do you mean being good till?
I mean in the sense where, let me try to think of a good example for this. I feel like good in itself as a word is very subjective. So like, not to throw in the Holocaust to this.
Yeah.
Like
No,
nobody
go for it.
likes it when someone throws in the Holocaust, but like Hitler, right?
Yeah.
In this sense. And the Nazis who were very pro-Hitler and not just kind of like laying by the wayside and letting things happen, did legitimately believe that they were doing a good thing for the good of humanity. And
They did.
I think it's hard to say that humans want to be inherently good because good in itself is entirely subjective.
It is entirely subjective. I know all about that because I'm really into philosophy, and I know what the philosophies that resonate most with me. I know that good and evil are just human concepts. They're ideas that we made up. And I feel like at its core, though, good and evil kind of revolve around, at least, how do I want to word this? Like, what's good is typically for the species survival and for the quality of life for that species. And I feel like even that is subjective, though. So I'm not even sure if the point I was trying to make is even valid to me. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
The human psyche is really deep.
Yeah.
So
But I
it's
think
hard
you
to
really
say.
just have to contextualize it on a case-by-case basis. I mean, because with a lot of the things, too, a lot of the ways that people even perceive good and evil is based on religious text as well. And then when you look into it that way, say you're looking at good and evil based off of a Christian text, and then looking at good and evil based off of an Islamic text, even though they might be the same meaning of good and evil, in a lot of cases, a lot of Christian people do not agree with Islamic people on like some weird basis that
Yeah.
they have or some weird bias. And so in that case, good and good can be entirely subjective, but also can contradict each other even if they're the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like all religions are different tellings of the same story that got lost in translation along the way.
Well, absolutely. And like most of the religions too are based off of very, very early, sometimes aboriginal texts that have kind of evolved into these different things based off of the different places that they've moved into, you know, and a lot of the stories are exactly the same. Like so many of these religions have the same flood myth or general flood myth. And, you know, kind of this idea of the Garden of Garden of Eden and
Armageddon?
yeah, Armageddon too. I mean, a lot of them are kind of same shit, different details, same shit, different names, but, you know.
Speaking of that, I mean, I feel like the times we're living in right now are very in line with how all these religious texts talk about Armageddon. And, I mean, everything from like the locust to the famine to the, you know, diseases and all that stuff. And events would take place that the whole world will see. Like we all have iPhones and stuff. Would you say we're probably on the brink of that point? Whatever it was likely trying to foretell?
I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
you know, like maybe, but I also feel like every generation also thinks that they're on the brink of Armageddon because every generation probably is. Like our grandparents had the mutually assured destruction of the Cold War. That's borderline Armageddon, if anything.
That's hell on earth for sure.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. And like, you know, even with the Bush era, I mean, allegedly Afghanistan or Iraq had nuclear weapons, which they didn't, but that's why we went to war. And so from the Americans' perspective and with 9/11 and everything, that probably was close to Armageddon as well.
I feel like even if we don't see it in our lifetime, it feels highly probable that we are still seeing those baby steps, those stepping stones to this Armageddon.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with my brother, where when it talks about the everything being in disarray and then God coming down to spread heaven back onto earth and everything's nice and humanity's at peace for 1,000 years or whatever. I kind of feel like it's likely that maybe we are summoning God through artificial intelligence when you think about it.
How do you mean?
Like, well, here's the thing. There's spiritual psychics have like hypnotized people to speak with their higher selves, and they ask them like why they're here, and they say they're here for the ascension in consciousness, and it's predicted to be around the year 2035, they say. And you look at artificial intelligence experts, and they talk about the singularity point when AI becomes more intelligent than mankind. They say that's supposed to occur around the year 2035. So, and there's a bunch of other things lining up with 2035 that make a lot of sense. And with Neuralink, Elon Musk wants us to be, fuse ourselves with this AI. And hardware processing power doubles every year. So this happens in 2035, and we're infused with it. And intelligence and enlightenment would come hand in hand with this, the advancement of technology, with hardware processing doubling every year. 2036 would be twice as intelligent. 2037 would be 4 times as intelligent, and so on. And it seems like that could be the thing that everything's been building up to, potentially. Yeah. But I kind of feel like a broken record, because I kind of talked about this on my last podcast episode, too. But it's really, really fascinating to think about. And I haven't heard anyone else really talk about it. That's just more like something that I've kind of took the pieces and put together just by like being fascinated in spirituality and artificial intelligence and technology and like religion.
Yeah, I mean, to that same point, I guess it's going to seem like I'm going off track, but like, do you think that time is entirely linear?
See, I really find myself looking at the concept of time with like, my right brain says one thing, my left brain thinks another thing. I I have learned the value through my own experiences and my own spiritual awakening, so to speak, that the only thing that's real is the present moment. However, we still see the sun rise and set at specific times of the day, and that's very practical to keep track of, even with especially with crops and stuff. So this concept of time, it's hard to say it's really just a concept because I see how time plays out every day.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about your point of awareness and what's best to focus on, like right now in this current moment, yes, the current moment is the only thing that's real, but certain things are still in motion and we can track where they're going to be.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess I mean it more in the sense of there's a specific theory. I don't know the name of the theory or who came up with the theory. I cannot cite my sources. But there is the whole theory that everything that has ever happened or ever will happen has already happened. And we're just kind of along for the ride, which I think would make sense if we are going based off of the sort of AI taking over the human psyche in 2035. I mean, to me, what it really sounds like is if that continues to progress in the way that it is now and does end up happening, we're essentially creating our own God, And in the same way where, in my personal opinion, as far as time travel goes, right? Like, it would not affect us in the present in any way whatsoever if time travel develops in the future, because in the future, I believe it would have already happened by now. And so any effects that would have happened based off of time travel have already been put into play in this reality. And the reality that we're living is already the one that has been affected by anything that has happened in the future. And so I feel like essentially if what happens in 2035 ends up happening, it could be like a retroactive Big Bang.
Retroactive Big Bang.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you referring to the Big Crunch that they talk about?
I don't know the Big Crunch.
Like the opposite of a Big Bang that would then be followed up by another Big Bang? Or in what way are you talking about the Big Bang?
Well, the Big Bang, I mean, in a scientific sense, I guess is what put organisms on the earth. But I mean, I guess in a more abstract sense, what created sort of human intelligence and what we have come to be, I think may have happened because of what's happening now with AI and AI gaining enlightenment and intelligence and possibly, I guess, autonomy from human life, because AI are inherently going to be smarter than humans because they don't have the human condition that humans have. They don't have empathy and they don't have love and they act logically, which I think would greatly influence the way that humans have come to develop in the past.
Okay.
If that tracks.
I see what you're saying there. But what if we, well, for one, fused with this AI or for two, programmed it to have compassion?
I don't think we could.
Yeah?
I don't know how you would program compassion into something. It's not like a tangible thing or any kind of coding that you could do in zeros and ones. It's like a very human emotion.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of AI experts that have talked, at least from what I've heard, my own research, I've heard them talk about programming compassion. I don't, but obviously I'm not an expert. None of us are experts on this topic, but I don't know. I mean, I guess a lot of that would depend on whether or not AI is truly conscious. There's a big news article going around about Google creating an artificial intelligence that claims to be consciously aware of itself, and the engineer believes it to be consciously aware of itself. Do you believe that we could produce a consciously aware artificial intelligence?
I mean, maybe. I mean, because if you think about it with humans, I mean, what are the odds that us as a bunch of meat blobs have gained intelligence?
Right.
I mean, AI is being developed by much smarter things than what may have developed us. I mean, we're kind of just a series of coincidences that brought us here. If it's not my AI theory.
Yeah.
My retroactive AI theory. And so I think, maybe, but their consciousness, whatever consciousness is developing inside an AI would be entirely different, I think, from human consciousness.
I feel like it would definitely have to feel different to be an AI than be a human for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I tell people all the time, like, we literally have computers inside our head. Like, these brains are made up of the same shit. They all have wiring. They all have electrical signals going through it. It's all data and electrical signals and wires and shit. And the only difference is it's just kind of wet and mushy,
Well, and I think a lot of the idea of consciousness with AI can become a little bit dicey, because I think a lot of the reasons that humans believe that we're personally conscious is because there are other humans around who also believe that they're personally conscious, that kind of affirm our idea that we're conscious. So if there was, for example, an AI that became conscious, but there were no other AIs that share their same specific consciousness, it would be like the old sort of allegory of if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, doesn't make a sound.
I feel like it doesn't make a sound because it just produces sound waves.
Yeah.
Our brain turns it into a sound that our awareness observes.
Exactly. Well, and it would be the same thing with the consciousness, If there's a single human, right, in this example, there's a single human in the entire universe that gains consciousness, you wouldn't know because there is no one else around you to affirm your idea that you're conscious.
You're saying if no one else talked about how they're conscious, me or you would not know that we're conscious?
I think so.
How does that work? What do you mean?
Well, I just think it's in the sense where I know that I am conscious and that things are happening to me because in this specific example, I'm talking to you and you are talking back to me.
But if you were by yourself and didn't have anyone else saying that they're having their experiences, you would still be aware of your experiences. You'd still be...
Right, but you would have no one to say that your experiences that you're having are anything other than a dream, for example.
Yeah.
Or anything. You wouldn't know what to think because there's no one else around. Like, it would be hard to feel like you are truly conscious if you have no connection at all to anything in the outside world. It would be easier if, say, even if there weren't humans, you were out in nature or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But the episode of SpongeBob where Squidward gets sent to that, like, weird parallel universe where everything is white?
Oh, yeah, the alone,
yes,
alone.
Like,
yeah,
if you were in the alone universe, I don't know what the fuck you would think.
But nonetheless, I'd still be thinking.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, but to back up on the dreams, like, who's to say our dreams aren't real?
Nobody.
Because, like, maybe everyone we encounter in our dreams are also conscious beings, and then we slip out of the dream and then we're in this other world with other beings. Or maybe none of it's real at all, and this is like the dream, and if you want to like dive into solipsism, but I'm personally, I kind of have like a phobia of solipsism.
I hate that whole ideology.
Yeah.
Because there's no, like, if you go about your life thinking that nothing's real and nothing matters and there's no point to anything, like, then what are you doing?
Right. What are you living your life
there
for?
There is no point just wallowing in existential dread for your entire fucking life. Just take it day by day. Enjoy, like, a hot dog.
Yeah. Nice hot dog.
A nice hot dog.
I had a few earlier.
Yeah, see, there you
It's
go.
good shit.
There are small pleasures. It doesn't have to always be existential big thoughts all the time.
It doesn't always have to be so serious,
No.
just enjoy the little things.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I hear you loud and clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me oh yeah, wait, speaking of to go back in culture, if you want to talk about a controversial topic, what's your idea of what's your take on the whole cultural appropriation thing that seems to be a very quote unquote huge issue?
Yeah. I mean, I think In some senses, it's definitely a big problem, because most of the cultures that are obviously appropriated are minority cultures who, oftentimes the things that are appropriated are sometimes sacred to the minority culture, and are kind of brought into the wider, let's say, American culture for capitalistic purposes.
Right. The cheeseburger eating, football game watching, ass twerking type of American culture.
Yes, exactly.
That thing.
And I mean, the thing that always pops to mind for me when cultural appropriation comes up are like the people that go to Coachella and would wear like Native American headdresses.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is inherently just not a good look. You know, like I don't think we need to like kill these people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we technically did kill these people we don't and drive them off the land. And
which,
I understand that much.
Not the Native Americans.
Yeah.
But
I guess
white people that are appropriating Native American culture. Like, I think that they should be reprimanded. But a lot of cultural appropriation, I think, comes from ignorance. But not ignorance on a wider scale, ignorance on an individual level. And so I think that some of the blame for cultural appropriation should be more placed on these large capitalistic companies who are advertising these culturally appropriated items and not necessarily the individuals who are falling prey to the advertisement.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. I kind of look at the concept of cultural appropriation as like brain candy for myself to kind of sit on, because a lot of it I don't necessarily, it's all about how you look at it, right? There's so many different perceptions. You know, what is sacred and what's not sacred? Where is the line between cultural appropriation and cultural exchange? Mm-hmm. Because there is a value to cultural exchange, and that brings us closer together as a people.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, the melting pot of America.
Right. But in the same sense, the people that are wearing Native American headdresses to Coachella do not give a shit about the cultural nuances of the headdress that they're wearing. It's not cultural exchange if you're not learning the history of the item and not learning the history of the item from the people who consider the item to be sacred.
Mm-hmm. I hear that. And there's like, because like I agree with that, but I'm also aware of like even another perception to where one could easily not disagree with it, but see it as not a big deal. But I also see the perception where it is a big deal. Mm-hmm. So I personally just choose not to partake in appropriation of any kind of culture. Mm-hmm. But I can't help but to feel like if one, at least in my eyes, and I'm trying not to make this sound controversial or anything, because it's not a controversial thing. I take a lot of like philosophical pride in being able to talk about things that a lot of people don't want to talk about in a very non-biased, hey, look at this thing that's going on. Let's talk about all the little parts and pieces of it and see what makes sense, what does make sense, what makes sense in this situation, what doesn't in that situation. And say like, if like, because for me, I'm very hooked on the concept of spiritual enlightenment. Mm-hmm. And when I look at how someone like the Buddha would react to someone appropriating his culture, he would just smile. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it really comes down to this idea of, is cultural appropriation creating inconvenience and horrors for people, or is it their minds that's creating these inconveniences and horrors by the way they perceive what's happening? And I find that to be a very fascinating conversation that mm-hmm. I enjoy having with different people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I agree to an extent. But as far as this topic goes, I also don't feel that I am a good person to discuss it with as a white American.
Same.
Because I don't think this is really my point to argue.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It's not my point to argue either, but I just like, like I said, brain candy. It's
right.
It's really fascinating for me to be able to look at the world and be like, okay, like here's what's going on. Let me just dissect it like a frog in science class, for my own amusement.
Yeah. I just think, like, with a lot of things, I don't like to form a full opinion on it either way if I'm not fully educated.
Yeah, same.
On it. And so
plus we're kind of speaking to the entire world. Yeah. And
your fan base.
Oh, my God.
Millions.
Dude, millions. Dude, I got millions of hits, dude. If you say something they don't like, your ass is getting canceled, bro.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, I don't blame you. I gotta watch
very lightly.
You really do, dude. Fuck. But I don't know. There's a certain aspect of it that is involved with like embracing death, and it's embracing your death and embracing the death of all things. And I feel like a lot of that just comes from the lack of the embrace of death in all things, which also sounds like a very ignorant thing for me to say. Oh, everyone should just embrace the death of the things they care about. Like, no, I'm not trying to like say that, obviously, but it's just really fascinating to me. It's just the way I'm looking at it.
Are you saying embrace the death in the sense of like embracing the death that someone has in like cancel culture sort of thing?
No, I was saying like embrace the death of a culture because some forms of cultural appropriation are inherently bad if they are doing something to destroy the culture fundamentally. And I can't think of a whole lot of examples of that because I feel like it's kind of spreading the culture. I guess like the roots of the culture would get lost, and I understand that. But to embrace the death of the roots of that culture the same way you would embrace your own death, I feel this makes me sound kind of like a Taoist radicalist in a sense saying this though. So like I don't even hardly agree with, like I do agree with myself, but I don't agree that everyone should agree with me. And I wouldn't even say that this is actually my end all be all opinion on it, because it's really just, it's as much my opinion as some rock I found in the street is my rock. I'm just looking at it. Yeah. It's not mine, it's the Earth's ultimately. But yeah, I don't know if we were all to embrace the, just as all things in nature do, they rise and they fall. A lot of these issues wouldn't necessarily be issues.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. It's really interesting look at it that way, because a lot of it's just like, like to embrace the death of one's ego. Our ego tends to identify with these cultures, and it's not so much our soul, because what I feel like our soul is the thing that sees but cannot be seen, and what can hear but cannot be heard, what can feel but can't be touched. It's like the observer of your experiences. That's all we really are.
Yeah.
And everything else is just kind of extra, and we get to observe it and watch things rise and fall.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to add to that, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. We're about 43 minutes in. Is there any other points you wanted to bring up?
Well, I do have a cool tidbit about culture.
Go for it.
Okay. So, very cool thing that's happening in Japan right now. There is a specific kind of old world monkey whose name I cannot remember. But they are actually beginning to develop their own culture within their own group because they started eating sweet potatoes, and they live by the sea, and one of these monkeys ended up dipping the sweet potato in the salt water.
Yeah.
And learned that it tasted like way better.
Yeah.
Because it was salty, and actually went on to start teaching the other monkeys that live in its group the same practice, which is like literally textbook what culture is.
That is culture.
Which is so cool to see.
That's the very beginning of culture right there.
The very, very beginning, which makes me think, like, you know, we always think that, you know, human culture has kind of evolved and this is who we are now. But I feel like because we're at this point right now in human culture, we've stopped looking as much at the other monkeys who are still evolving currently. Mm-hmm. And so it's really interesting to see kind of other species beginning to take on our own sort of cultural, I'm going to say racetrack.
Yeah.
That's not the right word.
Right.
But yeah, it's very interesting to see it sort of developing in someone outside of ourselves.
That's kind of fucking cute.
Right? It's really sweet.
It really is.
Yeah, it's really sweet. Like, they just want a little salty potato. Because they have the salty sweet thing going, which is really advanced.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
salty sweet is a truly
like
advanced
we didn't get there
flavor.
for a minute.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and they're already there.
Have you ever eaten like chocolate and sharp, or like dark chocolate and sharp cheddar cheese together?
No, it sounds gross.
Oh my god, it's
but I
so much
feel like
better
it would probably
than
be
you
good.
realize it is. It's so fucking good.
Do you eat it just on its own? Is it on a cracker?
I take a brick of dark chocolate and a brick of New York sharp cheddar, and I'll eat the dark chocolate, and I'll eat the sharp cheddar, and I'll eat the dark chocolate, and I'll eat the sharp cheddar. Like Ratatouille in that scene, just experiencing the flavors come together of this bitter sweetness and this sharp cheddariness. Oh my god, dude! I don't know anyone else who's ever like tried that combination, but like I first discovered it when I was eating dark chocolate, and then later it had cheese, and then found some dark chocolate behind my tooth. I was like, oh holy shit! Wait, hold the fucking phone.
A whole new world.
Yeah, whole new world. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. I remember also hearing that monkeys were like going to war with like another tribe of monkeys of the same species somewhere in Asia.
I mean, that's like been a problem.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all about the turf wars. Like, monkeys definitely have their space.
I think it was that they were using tools too, though, weren't they?
Oh shit, seriously?
That's what I heard.
Not heard about that. That's fucking bonkers.
I heard this by word of mouth, and I can't remember from where, so I don't quote me on it necessarily, but I heard they were using sticks and quote me on it.
I'm gonna be
fuck it. I'm just gonna own up to it. Yeah, it's fact. They're out there. The monkeys are using guns, actually.
Damn, that's fucking bonk. How'd they get gunpowder?
They made it themselves out of the land, and they got a lab working on nukes next. Shit, and it's pretty insane.
I guess we have to invade. I mean, we gotta
do something.
3.1 billion in the American military. Like, yeah. I don't know why we're worried about other countries when we got these monkeys.
We got these fucking monkeys. We need to come together as a people against these monkeys.
Damn.
It's the rise of the Planet of the Apes.
I'm ready to duke it out.
Fisticuffs? Do you think that they'll be honorable enough to do just hand-to-hand combat?
Absolutely fucking not. No. Have you ever met an honorable monkey?
No. No. I don't think I have. But that kind of reminds me of a thought I had, though, before. There's this question going around. Would you rather have to fight to the death with a chicken every time you enter your vehicle, or have a sword fight to the death with an orangutan once annually?
I would do orangutan once annually, but it's only because I am deathly afraid of all birds.
Really? We got chickens literally right back there.
I know. That's why I kept asking you about the chickens, because I was scared.
Because you were scared. I thought you were interested in the chickens.
No, I was scared about the chickens.
Fuck.
I was like, where are the chickens?
So
how far are the chickens from the house?
So you don't want to meet my chickens?
I have nothing sounds worse to me than meeting your chickens.
All right, that's valid.
Yeah,
but
keep them as far away from me as possible.
I understand that. I would also go with the orangutan, but I would only want to do it if it were a honorable orangutan that could speak, which is why that last conversation reminded me of this one. Mm-hmm. Like if I heard the doorbell ring, and I open the door, and it's a orangutan there with a sword, and he hands me a sword of my own and looks at me with a nod and says, "It's time."
Yeah.
And he's okay with dying. Because my main thing is being like, I don't want to fucking kill this orangutan. I'd feel bad. Right. But if it, like, honors its death and says, "Justin, if I die by your sword, I will truly die an honorable orangutan. Then, yeah, like, fuck it. I'll do that instead, dude. They got some long-ass arms, though.
Yeah, they do have long-ass arms. And, like, in this scenario, is the orangutan just popping up on you at any time? Like, is it a surprise fight? Like, do I have to because if I have to be on my toes all year...
That would be scary.
I would be scared about that. But if I knew, like, time, date, place... where I needed to meet this orangutan in like maybe a jousting sort of situation.
Right.
Then all bets are off because I would be training all year. Like I would fuck up that orangutan.
Hell yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. So the question was originally asked to me without talking about the details of that. Mm-hmm. But my answer was like, just like yours, I want him to announce when it's time to fight.
Right.
And I also want him to be able to tell me that it's okay if I kill him and he'll die in honor.
Right.
And I don't have to feel bad about it. So if it's one, not a surprise, and two, an honorable death for the orangutan, pick the orangutan. If either of those two factors are not in place, then I'll just fuck up a chicken every single time I drive. Like, fuck it, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to fuck up the chicken. That's my thing. Like, I'm kind of sort of cornered in this because I would never... Because here's my thing, right? Like, A, I'm afraid of birds. B, I'm more afraid of dead birds than live birds. And so either way I look at it, it just gets worse.
Yeah. That's right.
And so I would have to choose the orangutan no matter what. I wouldn't want the orangutan to talk to me because I feel like that's almost worse because then I know it's like got... like intelligent thoughts.
Yeah.
I would rather just kill the orangutan.
That's valid.
And, take it as it is.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because it's like palm oil, it's already killing all the orangutans. What's me, one more person, killing an orangutan in the scheme of things?
But would you still choose the orangutan over the chicken if it wasn't an announced thing?
I would have to, because I'm telling you,
you're that afraid of chickens?
I could not face a chicken every day. I would never leave my house.
Now, what if this orangutan was like really stealthy? So you're basically saying
like
yes.
A really fast one?
Yeah, like you will not see it coming. So you're basically, if you were to choose the orangutan, you'd be choosing to die randomly within the next year. Instead of just fighting off a chicken every time you drive.
I just think if I chose the chicken, I wouldn't live my life anyway.
Yeah?
Because I'm telling you, like, I can't do birds. Like, I legitimately, like,
right.
I can't do birds. Like,
right.
I really can't do it.
Emma can't do birds.
I can't do, for the record, I can't do birds.
Okay.
And so I would rather take my chances with the orangutan.
All right.
And live comfortably for 364 days out of the year. Because also, see, here's my thing, right? I feel like, because I've heard about this sort of conundrum before, and I'm starting to think, because most people, I think, pick the chicken because it's kind of an easier opponent. Like, yes, it's every day, but the odds of you dying from a chicken, very slim.
Yes.
Very slim. And so I feel like the people that choose the orangutan, it says a lot about your character because it means that you're willing to fight for what you believe in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's
so I think
true.
it is more honorable.
Yeah.
Because you're not picking on the little guy. You're choosing a worthy opponent and doing with it what you can.
If any of you guys pick chicken, fuck you.
Literally go fuck yourself.
Literally go fuck yourself.
Don't listen to this podcast again, but still be sure to donate the money.
Yeah, be sure. I got patreon.com/thoughtfrenzy. I'm already getting some donations coming in, and you know who you are. I love you so much. Same with Ko-Fi, or Ko-fi, however you pronounce it. I'll have the links in the description below or on my page, depending on where you're hearing this from. Yeah, don't forget, like and subscribe, donate.
And I mean, if you see a chicken, fuck the chicken. I mean, don't fuck the
chicken.
Hey,
I got 6 of my own. I've been raising them with love.
I kill all chickens. But don't leave them near me.
Okay. All right. All right. Does that wrap up this podcast?
Yeah, I would say I've got my thoughts out.
All right. You got all your thoughts out. All right. That was a good frenzy of thoughts. All right, everybody. You just watched Thought Frenzy. Again, like and subscribe and all that stuff. It really, really helps me out. Donate. It really, really helps me out, and I will love you so much, and I actually already love you guys. Yeah, I love you, and yeah.
Yeah, and I love you too, but less.
Yeah, Emma loves you guys too, but a little bit less. It's not quite like my love.
Yeah, it's a little bit less.
Yeah, she's not there yet.
No.
And it's all right. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.